And to give us an update on who is and who isn't included in the government's new $130 billion JobKeeper package, it's the Prime Minister himself. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you so much for joining us here tonight in the pouch.
That's no problem, Johnny. Thank you for having me.
Prime Minister, this package took a long time to put together. Why the hold-up?
Well, Johnny, $130 billion is quite a large number, and it certainly took a long time for me to digest the number of zeros. I mean, you know when you look at a number with heaps of zeros and you have to count them one by one until you figure out how many there are, and then you have to think about the actual place value of each of the numbers? I honestly don't know how the teachers, the parents at home, do it.
We've all been there. Look, let's get to who is and who isn't included in this JobKeeper package. Firstly, are non-profits included, or did you manage to neglect them like you did the koalas in the bushfires?
Ouch, Johnny, a bit too soon, buddy. But not-for-profits are certainly included, provided that they meet the thresholds very clearly outlined in the government's 43,883-page criteria.
Righto. And what about the Tooth Fairy then? Is she included in this package?
Look, Johnny, I'm running on 4.5 hours sleep, and I didn't come here to answer such frivolous and disrespectful questions. Of course the Tooth Fairy is included. I mean, with dentists now pulling the pin, she's going to be busier than ever. And since she has a job, we're considering her an essential service.
Fair enough. My 5-year-old daughter will be stoked with that. So I suppose Santa's included then as well.
Sorry?
Mr. Prime Minister, there's Santa. Is Santa included as well?
Well, as we understand it, Santa has been underpaying his elves for quite some time while giving his shareholders their fair, and I mean fair, share of dividends. So yes, of course he is included.
While it might be an inconvenience that if Santa went out of work, some people might see this as an unnecessary bailout of Santa, given that he hasn't budgeted properly while still paying his shareholders.
Would they?
Probably. I mean, only if they've only recently been to their optometrist.
We might have to close them down tomorrow.
Well, could you wait until after 12 p.m? Because I don't want to miss out like I did when the pubs shut.
Consider it done.
Hello, and welcome to The Pouch. Hello? Welcome to The Pouch, the eternally dusty four-wheel drive of podcasts that helps the average Aussie try and make sense of their current political environment. I'm Greg, if only there was another name for groups of two savage.
And I'm Jake. I'm getting fat working from home far Wharton. On today's episode, we talk toxic Clive, robots taking our debts. Far out. Robots taking our debts, sports emailing, and price gouging.
And Jake, while we're snug as a bug in a rug in the proverbial pouch, I want to know about the National Cabinet. Who's on it? How did they get chosen? What is it made out of? How much is it out of IKEA? Can I get it cheaper secondhand through Facebook Marketplace? And are they actually allowed to be disagreeing with each other?
Spoiler alert, I don't know.
Well, I really wanted that comma gone from the top of that script, Jake. You've got on today's episode, we talk toxic Clive, then comma, robots. And I'd like it to just be, we talk toxic Clive robots, because I just love the idea of Clive Palmer robots just,
that are toxic.
Running around. Just shutting down nickel refineries everywhere.
Too soon.
So we're on the topic of toxic Clive. So we do have the this is not some past episode where we're ignoring the fact that coronavirus exists.
It's just one where we acknowledge that it's oversaturated at the moment and people are turning off podcasts because everyone's talking about everything related to coronavirus. Let's not even discuss it. So, Greg, how is your coronavirus going today?
It's good, man. It's good. I treat it like a pet now. Now, you've got, so toxic Clive. So yes. I love a bit of Clive Palmer news.
Me too.
And he's just,
so does he, by the way.
Wonderful. He's like, I haven't been in the news for a while. So tell me what's happening with Clive. Bring me up to date.
Well, so Clive Palmer put out a double-page ad in several newspapers late last week on Friday, and it was actually right around Australia. He put out these 2-page ads, and he promised in these ads to fund millions of doses of hydroxychloroquine. Which, if I've pronounced it correctly, is the decades-old, rarely used drug that is used overseas as an anti-malarial sort of compound. And in Australia, it's largely used to treat severe cases of rheumatoid arthritis. But
I've heard of this, right? So I know that anyone who follows both Australian politics and American politics, not only would they be avid listeners of Politics Over Coffee, the other podcast that we talk about, but they would be aware that Trump sort of got himself into a little bit of hot water with this, I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, drug.
Yes, no, you're exactly right, and essentially both Clive and Trump discussed the miracle, the inverted commas miracle nature of this drug, and that it is promising for treatment of the thing that we decided we wouldn't talk about at all in this episode. But interestingly enough, that Clive's claim that the Therapeutic Goods Administration had approved this drug was in fact a false claim, and it turns out that the Therapeutic Goods Administration is now investigating Clive Palmer for his support of the use of this particular drug for the aforementioned condition that we will not be discussing in this episode.
The virus which shall not be named.
Exactly. We'll just call it Voldemort. But he's essentially been referring to this drug as a cure, and as has Donald Trump. But the fact is that essentially this drug is highly toxic and comes with a number of essentially side effects for taking the drug. So to market it as a solution without ensuring that the other side of the story, i.e. the significant health effects for particular populations, that is a bit negligent, and essentially that's why the TGA is looking into it. But essentially, Clive has funded the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital in Brisbane, funnily enough. Good place for Royal Brisbane Women's Hospital in Brisbane.
Yes, yes. I think we've got one in Sydney.
The Brisbane Hospital.
Pretty sure we've got one in the Blue Mountains, actually.
Yes, but essentially they're looking into it. But he's donated $1 million to the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital Coronavirus Action Fund.
Or the URBOWHF for short.
I feel like they started with the acronym and then tried to make
worked
it work.
Backwards.
Yeah.
Cheapskates.
But that's it for that episode. I mean, for that story. We're done. We're done.
For the episode.
We're great. We're done.
Now, not only do I love me some Clive Palmer news, Jake, I love me some pork barreling news. And it's been a little while since we had a little bit of pork barreling news. Our producer has decided that this is our new long-running segment, pork barreling 2020. What's happening with it? Bring me up to speed with the saga that is the pork barreling saga.
Well, emails that have been provided to the Senate inquiry that is probing the Community Sports Infrastructure Grant Program reveal that Sports Australia fired its first warning shot to the Sports Minister, Bridget McKenzie, about her handling of the $100 million fund as early as December 2018, raising concern that she was overriding the recommendations in the first round of the bloody program.
Man, who would have thunk it?
Well, in retrospect,
I'm shocked.
Everyone. But the email, which was sent by the Executive Director of Sports Partnerships, Robin O'Neill, said that the organisation wanted to, quote, reinforce advice given to the Minister about her decision to go against the recommendations of the assessment panel. Quote, One of the issues would be the reputational risk funding decisions could be perceived as favouring localised projects that did not meet the assessment criteria. Imagine that.
How wrong they were. How wrong they were.
How wrong they were.
Maybe it went to their spam folder.
Exactly. I mean, that's where Comic Sans belongs, frankly.
Speaking of robots that get things wrong.
Yeah.
Me?
Oh.
Yes. You feel like a robot working from home, don't you?
Yeah.
I know that the robots were to blame for this for one of these sagas around the Centrelink payment. So essentially referred to as the robo-debt scandal. So we've got the sports rort scandal, and now we've got the robo-debt scandal. So tell me about the robots, and when do I start arming myself?
Well, I mean, technically...
Well, actually, it's way too late for that. When do I put up the shields?
Yeah, exactly. When to engage shields. Yeah, so the federal government has privately admitted that it will be forced now to refund 400,000 plus welfare debts worth about $550 million related to wrongly issued, so-called robo-debt notices of debt incurred by individuals. So
this is great news. Yeah, this is like such good news. And I'd love to be able to indulge us in how great this news is, but I just can't get past the sentence that says the federal government has privately admitted.
Yes, I'm glad that you pointed that out, because that means, yes, absolutely.
Usually I get in lots of trouble for pointing things out. Greg, you're really overthinking things way too much again.
No, you're absolutely right to point that out, because what this comes from is a leaked ministerial submission to the cabinet from the government ministers that include Stuart Robert, Anne Ruston and Christian Porter that was prepared last month, and it reveals that it expects to refund that over 400,000 debts over the next 12 months. And
so this is leaked.
This is a leaked ministerial document.
We have exclusive pouch information.
Well, we have exclusive information that was reported by several other sources, but exclusive.
Yeah, but we have it.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. The holder of the key gets to use it, right?
Yeah.
That sounds like a profound saying. Why not? Why not? But
we'll stick with that.
The holder of the key gets to use it. Yep. So it is an interesting one.
Finders keepers, Jake. Finders keepers.
So Services Australia estimate that it will administer over 449,000 refunds to determined under the program, and their associated repaid debts would be refunded commencing in July 2020 and concluding within 12 months, said the leaked report. Now
my interest is piqued.
Yes, I'm glad.
Q-U-E-D.
Yep.
Yeah. What's the interesting bit?
Well, the interesting bit is that we simply do not know how this will interplay with the other stimulus measures. I mean, is this the sort of thing that is the thing is, this was so severe and so long running. Essentially, the government services minister and the minister responsible for the robo-debt, Stuart Robert, was for many times, for quite a long time, suggesting that this was something that was fine, was absolutely fine. It was working correctly, and then they scaled back the algorithm that was used in order to calculate debt, and eventually it was taken to the High Court, and the government, threw up their hands and essentially said, "This is indefensible. We apologise." So
this is the same Stuart Robert who was my bad.
Well, yeah, I mean,
he's the my bad Stuart.
He actually said my bad in this case as well.
Oh,
Yeah, he didn't really. I'm just being hyperbolic.
I was going to say that's not good.
I'm being hyperbolic. But,
Okay.
But it is incredibly
So
interesting.
he does apologise. He just does it in private.
Well, I mean, this involved also Anne Ruston, the social services minister, and others. But broadly speaking, this was an absolutely massive thing. This was taking money away from, in many cases, the most vulnerable Australians, those people that are surviving on very meagre amounts of money. There were reports of people having suicided because of the impact of this debt and the stress caused by this debt. So it was absolutely harrowing to hear the stories of people who had been sent letters through this scheme. But
and you had to prove your innocence.
Correct. Yeah. Essentially, you were instead of being presumed innocent, you were presumed extraordinarily guilty and required to prove your innocence. Because what it did was essentially, if you earned a bunch of money, say over 3 weeks, it would average that 3 weeks income over the next 12 months essentially, or over the next quarter. And that in many cases, due to casual work, sometimes it's a boom time, sometimes it's a bust time, sometimes you're sick. But, invariably, if you haven't earned, that amount of money over the period that it was extrapolating within, then you don't have that money to work with. So you cannot pay back that debt. So it was very unfortunate. And I'm absolutely glad that the government is taking action on it, even though this is leaked, so we don't actually know. We don't actually know whether they will take full action on it. But I would speculate that this was going to be their course of action anyway.
And it sounds to me like Stuart Robert did the coding himself. Like he just had a go at having, I can do this. Because isn't he a mate? He's a mate with Scott Morrison, isn't he?
He is. And I would say that Stuart Robert, I think it was about 2 years ago, was forced to pay back about $30,000 as an internet bill. Because he tried to claim that his $30,000 internet bill was for work purposes, except it was his home internet bill.
I was going to share. Maybe he was getting his kid to do the coding, and the kid jumped on one of those crystal games or something like that you download hundreds of. Anyway, speaking of terrible games, Jake, Facebook and social media. That apparently some reports, who would have thunk that social media was espousing untruths regarding supermarkets and price gouging.
Yes, it's quite interesting. One of the things that we, I suppose, collectively feared, and that was causing that was causing the panic buying experienced by many individuals was the premise that as stock diminished in supermarkets, then the supermarkets could charge essentially whatever they wanted. So people wanted to go and buy as much as they possibly could, so that they didn't have to experience those higher prices, made by desperate store owners. But it seems that, and this is a report coming out of the ACCC, or the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, saying essentially that
ACCC.
Exactly. I love the way you say that.
I'd say it rolls off the tongue, but
it rolls off the uvula.
Hang on, I don't know if I've got one of those.
Well, you should.
I'll get it looked at.
But
Carry on.
It was very interesting. So essentially, the chair of the ACCC, the ACCC, Robert Sims, has said that he has not noticed, or they have not found any evidence of price gouging in the broader Australian, supermarket industry.
Yeah, well, that's good.
It is good. I thought it was a really nice way to wrap up the major news items. That people are being pretty okay about responding to the shortage of goods.
Yeah, I'd like to know if that is dying down. Like, because we haven't had to buy any sort of toilet paper or any real sort of end of the world produce or anything. What I don't know if it's dying now. I know that this comes off the back of Woolworths announcing their $80 box.
Yeah.
It's a basic box.
$80 basic box.
Basic box. So the news.com.au has a photo of Josh Kennedy, co-captain of the Sydney Swans. He was among the first to try the basic box. Looks pretty good.
I just wonder whether they're trying to capitalize on, the loot crate type industry where you get a random box of things that you might be interested in.
Absolutely. Look, it looks like it's got Vegemite and baked beans and tuna and plain flour, nuts, orange juice. That's nice.
Yeah. Well, I got to say,
that's a bit of a treat.
As the resident person with celiac disease who has to buy, well, I suppose you've got it in your household as well. But as someone who has to buy a different kind of food, I have noticed a certain amount of price gouging for my basic elements of food for probably the last 12 years.
Well, it's ongoing, and you deserve it. So
I do deserve it. Yeah.
You deserve it for being born inferior. That's just your problem. That's not our problem.
Exactly.
Look,
don't put your problems onto society.
Look, Woolworths, big sponsor of the show.
Yeah, huge sponsor.
So go and buy your $80 box, and we get 4 baked beans for every box that you buy. So thanks Woolworths, and thank you Coles.
So I'm really looking forward to 100 people buying it so I can have a full 10.
Jake, this week, while we are in this pouch, and it is cozy in this pouch today, isn't it?
It is. Yes.
It's so cozy. I feel.
I'll come close to the microphone. Hi, Greg.
I think so. Hello.
Hi.
I don't know if we're meant to be this close together. I think it's illegal at this point. I think in New South Wales you get fined. I think they take your house and your children.
Yes,
if you
I have heard
stand
that.
this close.
In Queensland, they give you a basic box.
It's a score, isn't it? I want to know about
it's
this
where you
cabinet.
go to live, in the basic box.
I want to know about this cabinet.
Yes, the National Wartime Cabinet.
Yeah, I want to know about the wartime cabinet that we've got going on here. Now, he sort of announced, this is what I know about it, right? Scott Morrison announced that he was going to have a cabinet, and he said that a few people that were on it, a couple of premiers and all that sort of stuff. So I want to know a bit of details about that. I know that they meet very regularly, and every time they meet, it's not good for the country. It is good for the country. I'm very understanding of the fact that we're in a pandemic and the actions that we're taking are all helping each other live.
But yes, the National Cabinet is a wartime-style national cabinet that with Scott Morrison at the head, the state premiers and the territory chief ministers. So the group includes 5 Labor members and 4 Liberals. And essentially it is a...
Wait. Hang on. You got 5 Labor and 4 Liberal.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice.
It is, yeah. It is, but I suppose the Labor members are, state and territory premiers and chief ministers. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I remember now. He said something snarky to a reporter or something like that because the reporter said, how are you going to get bipartisan support for all of this or, blah, 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 blah. And he said, well, you've got 5 Labor members on there and 4 Liberal. You can't get any more bipartisan than that.
Exactly. So essentially, yes, it is a rebadging of the existing Council of Australian Governments, or the COAG.
Is that COAG? Okay,
yeah.
Yep, I've heard of COAG.
So,
I thought it was a glue.
You're thinking of CLAG. But yes, it is entirely in response to the virus that we shall not be talking about. But yes, it was formed to reduce the significant disparity in information between the feds and state governments on the response to the virus that we're not talking about, that we experienced in the early couple of weeks of the pandemic that we're not talking about. And this has been reduced somewhat not, but there's still differences, particularly around schools. The feds will say one thing, and then the states will, make their own decisions on how their citizens are going to respond. Because invariably, the states and territories do manage their own, hospital and health system. So it is within reason that they be able to do that, and they manage their own schools, etc. Their infrastructure. So it takes very high level advice from Australian Health Protection Principal Committee, which is a permanent group comprising of the Commonwealth's chief medical officer.
I know that the deputy chief person is Paul Kelly, because that's easy to remember. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I thought, well, I've just got to remember the chief medical officer, whose name is, drum roll,
Roger Badacta.
Chief Medical Officer, Australia. I'm sure he's going to come up once I Google it, surely. Brendan Murphy. That's him?
Yes. Oh, old Murphs.
Professor Brendan Murphy. Yes, okay. All right, great. So Professor Murphy, so he's on there.
Yeah, he is on there. There's a bunch of virologists, epidemiologists, and others with specialist, pandemic modelling type knowledge. Not just regular modelling, because, the ability to walk up and down a catwalk, one would say that that's not an essential skill to have, as part of viral modelling. You need to know how something's going to spread, not just how good something is going to look, I suppose. But yes, while I could not find any information on this, I would also expect that within the National Cabinet there are economic modellers there, in addition to the pandemic modellers, that advise the group on how the various impacts of essentially social shutdowns are going to affect the broader Australian public.
Yeah, okay, so this is where we're getting... These are the people advising him on hairdressers and, how long they stay open and how many people you can, take to the park. And
although I do suggest that the only person advising him on hairdressers was Maurice Payne. Oh, that's a droll. It's a very droll joke.
Is it? I don't know what that means.
Maurice Payne just has, wonderfully solid hair.
Oh, well, that's exciting.
Yeah, very solid hair. Requires daily injection of hairdressing fluid.
All right, fair enough.
But yeah, you would expect that there would be a robust group of people there able to advise on, hey, if you stop people from being able to go to hairdressers, this is going to be the number of people that are going to be put out of work for the duration of the shutdown. Yeah. Or you close down gyms, what does that mean to, how many people? This is the number of contractors, this is the number of employees. So in total, this is the number of people that you can expect on Monday at Centrelink, Stuart Robert.
So what's next for this cabinet? I mean, like the stuff that they announce, they sort of say, well, we're going to review this in like 2 or 3. It's reviewed monthly.
Yeah, I think. I mean, we'll remain on. These progressive phases will probably be scaled back at some stage, but
I hope so. You heard it here first on the pouch.
Exactly. No, there's you would imagine that they would stay enacted in perpetuity, and that you would scale those phases back one by one. So say we're in phase 4, you can scale it back now to phase 3, so everyone can get 25 minutes of a massage, but not 5 minutes more.
So we are definitely in stage 3. I'm on the website now. Stage 3 is here, and that's the parks and the skate parks, the playgrounds, the outdoor gyms, the 2-person rule. That's our phase 3 one, which is in action now.
Yeah, and it seems that those decisions on what is in and out of the phases doesn't seem to be arbitrary. It seems to be quite well planned, because essentially they enact phase 1, and because if you acknowledge that the premise of all this is to prevent people, I realise that we're now talking about the thing that we said we weren't going to be talking about.
Oh, don't worry. But, everyone was thinking about it anyway. Everyone had zoned out at some point and started thinking about coronavirus. coronavirus. Yeah.
If the idea is essentially that we're trying to flatten the curve, we're trying to prevent people from absolutely overtly passing on the virus to too many people that will overwhelm our health system, then you would imagine you enact phase 1 and see where are people still congregating, where are they still coming into contact with lots and lots of other people, and then you go, okay, all right, well, phase 2 will involve all of those sections, and then you look again, you say, okay.
Phase 2 was the one where we all got in trouble.
Exactly. Phase 2 was you've been a very naughty boy, and you will not be allowed to go to the beach next week or for the next several weeks.
I remember that because people at work, I overheard them talking, and they were sort of like, it felt like we were getting in trouble from our dads, about doing it. And I was like, that's exactly what happened. Like people were being foolish and silly and not listening to the advice. So we moved to stage 2 and we all got in trouble. That's exactly what happened.
It is, I would say, a little bit funny though. I was reflecting on this this last week while I was having a conversation with my parents, that all of this, all of the actions that we're taking, or a large amount of the actions that we're taking, and this is a super cynical view, but a lot of the actions that we're taking are simply to protect boomers, i.e. the people in power. Because you and I, we're probably not going to get all that sick if and when we do get the virus, but we're all about protecting the boomers, which is, all the people in power, all the people running all the biggest companies, etc.
Well, it's grandparents too.
Of course. Let's not forget about the grandparents. But, let's still cynically point the finger at Scott saying, protect me.
Look, I appreciate the fact that he gets up and takes the heat of people's frustrations and stuff at the moment. He did it during the bushfires. Whether or not he did it well, we'll leave that open to discussion. But he's certainly copping a lot of flack every time he announces stuff. I love watching the comments on Facebook. It's a bit of a hit of mine. Just watching people sort of vent their frustrations and stuff. And a lot of people are saying great job and well done and get some sleep and thanks for everything you're doing. But there's a lot of people out there who are just like, what is this? This is just nonsense. Jacinda Ardern knows what she's doing. Let's all go over there and live over there because she knows what she's doing, whereas we've got these sort of piecemeal bits of advice. But like you said, once you unpack them, they're pretty sensible. Hard to judge. And from what I understand, anyway, the percentage rate increase of coronavirus in Australia is dropping.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's still things like contradictions that we discussed, on the last week's show, anyway, question mark, that we discussed recently on a recent episode. There are contradicting messages. There are confusion over messages, messages that are half delivered that people have to sort of figure out the rest of it, which is not great. But a lot of that you can sort of understand that this is an evolving situation. It literally is changing from day to day. And while you would love to think that in this or any type of situation where communication is so ridiculously important to get it right first time and every time, that some amount of, there are going to be mistakes, and we just need to accept that those mistakes should be and will be corrected each time.
Absolutely. All right. I'm satisfied.
Rant.
I feel sated.
Yeah, I feel sated too.
Oh, good.
I am hungry though, so I'm not exactly satiated, but I would say I'm sated.
Which one? Oh no, did I use it wrong?
No, you used it correctly. It's just an extension to the word.
Oh, is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not Sataned either.
Good. I'm glad with that.
Jake, thank you so much for talking to me about that cabinet today and robotic Clives. We didn't dwell too long in that space, but that's all right. We'll get
robotic toxic Clives.
He'll get his revenge.
He certainly will, and I fear that it may involve nickel.
And if our listeners are sick of texting their families about the coronavirus, what would you like them to do?
I would like them to, in the middle of texting, to go to the podcast on your podcast player of choice and rate and subscribe, and then share it with everyone.
Share that love.
Yes, exactly.
But this is something that we want spread. We want the pouch spread, not the virus spread.
Yes.
That's our new
Make
motto.
the pouch
Spread the
go
pouch.
viral.
That's right. Spread the pouch, not the virus. Jake, thank you so much for chatting with me on this beautiful Tuesday evening. It's a lovely evening out there. I love doing this Tuesday show. It's nice.
Yeah. I'm looking out my recording studio window. I can see several acres of unmown grass and a lake. It's very lovely.
Listen to Mr. Fancy Pants over here with his studio and his window.
Yeah.
I'm literally in my garage, sweating like an absolute trooper. Jake, thank you very much for chatting with me this week, and I will hopefully hear from you on Sunday. No, you can stop there because I've got the rest of it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's all good. We'll just go from there, and we'll just keep recording.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. That's so cool.
Just got to go to the other file. Okay, I'm good.
Okay.